My name was Michael. Just an ordinary name for a not-so-ordinary kid, one that most people preferred to ignore. I was the quiet guy in the back row, the one in old jeans, no fancy phone, and definitely not part of the popular crowd. Every class has one, the easy target. For the teacher, a convenient punching bag. For classmates, a shield. Better to laugh at someone else than become the next victim. My main tormentor? Our history teacher, Mr. Oleg Pavlenko. To the school administration, he was a model educator. Articulate, disciplined, always volunteering for contests. But for kids like me, he was a nightmare. "Michael, you're unprepared again," he'd say during class, even if I raised my hand. "You sit there staring at me with those eyes like you're waiting for something. All right then, enlighten us. What reforms did Peter the Great introduce? And don't quote Wikipedia, please." The class would laugh. He had a way of making it seem like jokes, but they cut deep. Jokes that lingered long after the bell. I stopped answering, stopped raising my hand, stopped trying at all. I'd show up to school and disappear. I stayed silent, took notes, doodled in my notebook, but at home I studied. For me, not for grades, not for him, for myself. Because I knew, someday I'd get out. Someday, I'd prove them wrong. But first, I needed to remember everything. And I did. Every humiliating comment, every moment he called on me just to belittle me, every sarcastic grade, every, "Well, I suppose books aren't a priority at home, are they?" said in front of the entire class. I clenched my jaw, I stored it all. I had no friends. My mother worked 2 jobs. My father left us. And the other teachers? They knew, but stayed silent, because Pavlenko was one of them. No one wants to challenge someone with connections, but I never forgot. And when he shook my hand at graduation and said, "Don't stop trying, Michael, though honestly, this might be your peak," I smiled, because I knew I'd be back. And when I came back, he'd feel it. University was my escape. A chance to start over. Nobody knew me as the quiet kid. No one had ever heard of Mr. Pavlenko or my humiliations. I arrived with a cheap backpack, 2 second-hand shirts, and a silent fire inside me. At first, I kept my head down. Old habits die hard. But something shifted. Maybe it was the freedom, or maybe it was the realization that no one was watching to laugh. I started answering questions in lectures. I joined a study group. People noticed me, for my mind, not as a joke. I chose to major in psychology and minor in computer science. Some thought it was a strange combination. For me, it made perfect sense. I wanted to understand people. What made them cruel? What made them break? And I wanted the tools to use that understanding, if needed. During my 3rd semester, I met Lena. She was bold, sarcastic, and terrifyingly smart. We studied together, argued endlessly, and eventually became inseparable. She once asked, "Why are you so obsessed with control?" I gave her a half-truth, because I grew up without any. What I didn't tell her was that every course I took, every paper I wrote, every piece of knowledge I absorbed, I framed it as a brick in the foundation of a future I was quietly building, one that ended with Oleg Pavlenko's downfall. After graduation, while most of my peers scrambled for jobs, I was already working. I freelanced in digital security, tracing leaks, protecting systems, or, in some cases, exposing them. I learned how to be invisible, how to cover tracks, how to manipulate narratives. One evening, while browsing alumni groups, I saw a familiar name, Pavlenko. He had recently received an award from the Regional Education Board. In the photo, he stood proudly in a suit, holding a plaque. My blood went cold. Not because he was still teaching, I expected that, but because in the background, blurry but unmistakable, was a kid in a hoodie, head down, avoiding the camera. I saw myself in that photo, and it hit me. There were more kids like me, still suffering, still being targeted. That was the moment I stopped preparing and started planning. Information. Not the kind you find on school websites or in press releases, but the kind whispered behind closed doors. I began with social media. Teachers, students, parents. Patterns emerged. Pavlenko liked control. He also liked admiration, and he especially liked when people were afraid of losing his approval. I joined local forums and community groups under false names. I posed as a worried parent, a prospective teacher, a nostalgic former student. Within weeks, I had access to gossip threads, old newsletters, private photos, and most importantly, connections. One message led to another. I reconnected with two former classmates, Anya, who had moved to Poland, and Serhii, who stayed in our town. Serhii remembered everything. He didn't hate Pavlenko, but he didn't like him either. He told me about the new principal, some complaints from recent years, and one incident that had been quietly buried. A student who dropped out, claiming emotional abuse. Nothing public, but it existed. I asked Serhii to get me a copy of the old class photos. He laughed. Nostalgia, huh? Something like that, I replied. Meanwhile, I contacted the student who had left, Dima. It took time, but I found him through an art blog. When he agreed to talk, I was careful. I didn't want to pressure him, only to listen. Dima told me stories that made my stomach turn. Same patterns, same tactics, only this time, they had almost driven him to self-harm. I told the counselor, he said. They said Mr. Pavlenko was just old-fashioned, that I should toughen up. That was the crack I needed. The system had failed, repeatedly. I built a file, dates, screenshots, testimonies. I found old interviews Pavlenko gave to local papers. I studied his language, how he twisted things, avoided direct answers. I created a timeline of events. Then I started tracing his allies. Who defended him? Who benefited from his presence? And who resented him? There were more than I thought. One teacher had been passed over for a promotion, twice. A parent had filed a complaint 2 years ago that mysteriously disappeared. I didn't need to fake anything. I just connected dots no one else bothered to connect. And I wasn't even close to done.
It started with a story. An anonymous blog post, written in the voice of someone who had suffered in silence under Mr. Pavlenko. It told of humiliation, manipulation, favoritism, and the unbearable silence that followed every cruel joke. The post wasn't signed, but it felt real, too real. I posted it to 3 different local forums, a parent group on Facebook, and an education watchdog blog. Within 48 hours, it had over 10,000 views. Comments poured in. Some said it was exaggerated, some claimed it was nonsense, but a few said, "This happened to me too." The second wave came with screenshots. I edited nothing, just posted redacted images of emails, messages from students, and a portion of Dima's testimonial, with his permission. I blurred names, kept it clean, but made it clear this wasn't fiction. The school board caught wind. They issued a statement. "We take such allegations seriously and will review the matter thoroughly." That was all I needed, because now the game was public. Pavlenko started to feel the pressure. I monitored his social media. He deleted old photos, limited comments, changed his bio to "retweets not equal endorsements." I smiled. He was retreating. Then came the bait. I created an anonymous email and sent a tip to a regional journalist. Nothing special, just a nudge. "You might want to look into the complaints against Oleg Pavlenko. Rumors say there's more to the story." A week later, the headline appeared. Beloved teacher under scrutiny for alleged emotional abuse. He wasn't fired. Not yet. But whispers turned into meetings. Students began talking. Parents demanded answers. A school board investigation was launched. I watched it all unfold. Calm, measured, patient. Because revenge isn't loud. It's strategic. And this was only the beginning. I thought I was ready. I had planned every move, every post, every fake identity. But what I didn't plan for were the people who got caught in the crossfire. Lena was the first. She wasn't part of the plan. She didn't even know about Pavlenko until I told her, vaguely, that I was trying to right a wrong from the past. At first, she was supportive. She knew how much I hated bullies, how much I hated silence. But when the article went viral, she recognized some of the screenshots, the style, the phrasing. "Michael, did you write that blog?" I hesitated. Some of it. She looked at me like I was a stranger. "That wasn't just a story. That was surgical. You're not trying to tell the truth. You're trying to destroy him." I didn't argue, because she was right. She left that night, said she needed time. I didn't try to stop her, because this was bigger than us. Then there was Sergey. He had helped me with info, told me about old scandals, pulled some staff records. But now his name was being dragged into online threads. People thought he was the whistleblower. His parents got calls. His job became uncomfortable. He messaged me, "Bro, I'm out. I didn't sign up for this." I understood, and I didn't blame him. But every sacrifice was fuel. I updated the blog with a new post. Not from me, from another former student. It detailed a list of warning signs to watch for in abusive teachers. It was calm, clinical, credible. It went more viral than the first. The education board announced a full audit of the school. And then, Pavlenko cracked. In a closed staff meeting, he lost his temper, screamed at colleagues, called the investigation a witch hunt, said someone was out to get him. A teacher recorded it. It leaked. Now the school board had no choice. They suspended him. But I wasn't satisfied. Because he still had defenders. Still had students saying, he was tough but fair. Still had parents saying, my kid liked him. He wasn't destroyed. Not yet. The official suspension made headlines, but the real damage was done behind the scenes. Pavlenko was no longer untouchable. His aura of authority had cracked. The Parents' Council held emergency meetings. The students whispered. Former colleagues kept their distance. But I knew Pavlenko. He wouldn't go down quietly. Sure enough, a week later, he released a statement, defiant, rehearsed, dismissive. I have always held my students to the highest standards. If some took offense to my strict approach, that is unfortunate, but I have no regrets. It was a slap in the face to everyone who had suffered. I wasn't done. The next move was personal. Using an encrypted line, I reached out to a journalist who had written about academic misconduct in the past. I fed her everything. The full timeline, redacted files, recordings, quotes, former students willing to speak anonymously. She hesitated. It's compelling, but we need someone on the record. And that's when I did the thing I never thought I would. I broke my silence. I gave her my real name, Michael Kovalenko. And I told her everything. She was stunned by the detail, the years of manipulation, the consistency of the accounts. The piece was published the following Sunday, full front page. My face blurred, my name altered slightly, but my voice clear as day. He made me hate learning, he made me believe I was nothing. And now I want to ensure no other kid ever feels that again. The fallout was immediate. Pavlenko tried to respond, but this time, no one was listening. Too many stories, too many voices. The board held a vote. It wasn't close. He was fired. Officially, dismissed for conduct unbecoming of an educator. I stared at the screen when I saw the headline. No joy, no cheering, just silence. I thought it would feel like justice. Maybe it was. But it didn't fix anything. Not really. Lena still hadn't called. Sergey ghosted me. My inbox was full of praise and hate in equal measure. But the boy in the photo, the one hiding behind the crowd, humiliated and voiceless, he could finally stand tall. And that had to be enough. They say revenge is sweet. But they never talk about what happens the day after. In the weeks following Pavlenko's dismissal, I was bombarded with messages. Some thanked me, some accused me of lying. A few tried to dig into my background, questioning my motives. The internet does not forgive, and it never forgets. I went silent again, deactivated socials, changed numbers, but I wasn't hiding. I was recovering. The adrenaline was gone, the goal achieved, but the emptiness, the void, was unexpected. I'd spent so many years fueling my purpose with pain and rage. Without them, who was I? One day, I received a letter, a real one, paper, pen, stamp, from Dima. Thank you for being the one to speak up when I couldn't. You gave me back something I thought I lost forever, my voice. I reread it 10 times. Then I cried, not out of sadness, but out of release. The walls I had built around myself started to crack. A week later, Lena showed up at my door. You destroyed a man, Michael, but you also saved kids. Both can be true. I needed time to understand that. We talked until the sun came up. No promises, no romance, just two people who had seen each other's darkness and still chose to sit across the table. Eventually, I returned to work. Quietly, I started consulting for NGOs, helping build safe reporting tools for students. I never used my name publicly again. I didn't need to, because the story was never about me. It was about every student who sat in the back, too afraid to raise their hand. Every kid who thought being silent was the only way to survive. And for them, I spoke.
2 years passed. Life went on. I moved to another city, found work that mattered. I wasn't rich, but I was grounded, centered. I no longer thought about Pavlenko every day. Until one grey afternoon in late October, I was invited to a regional education conference, part of my NGO work. I almost didn't go, but something pulled me there, a sense of closure maybe. I walked into the crowded auditorium, grabbed my badge, and found my seat near the back. The theme was restorative education. The keynote speaker was late. A hush fell over the room as a substitute presenter stepped up. And then I saw him, Pavlenko, older, thinner, his hair now grey around the temples. No applause greeted him. A few murmurs, some surprise, but no recognition of fame. He was just a man. He introduced himself. Ole Pavlenko, former history teacher. He didn't mention the scandal. He didn't need to. Everyone in education knew. But what came next stunned me. I came today not to teach, he said, but to ask something I never asked as a teacher. How many of us have harmed our students in silence? The room froze. He continued, shaky but sincere. I made mistakes, not because I was evil, but because I never looked in the mirror. I confused respect with fear, authority with cruelty. And when I fell, I thought I had been destroyed. But really, I was exposed, and I needed that. A silence deeper than any I had ever known filled the room. He scanned the audience, and for a fleeting second, our eyes met. He paused, then nodded. Not a plea, not forgiveness, recognition. And I nodded back, not because I forgave him, but because I saw something I never thought possible. Change, real change. And maybe that was the final chapter. Or maybe it was just the beginning of a better one.